You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Haristodoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Athan Haristodoulou. It is January 31st, 2022, when you guys are seeing this, but I am recording this right after the NFC Championship just wrapped up. What an absolute crazy couple of games. Championship weekend, it came and it delivered with two excellent matchups between both of these teams. The Bengals and the Chiefs going head-to-head. The Bengals fell back, and the Chiefs allowed them to catch back up. The 49ers and Rams fell back, and the 49ers let them catch up, and a big mistake ultimately cost them at the end of the game. But two wild matchups. We're going to talk about it all right now. I'm going to give my reactions on all four of the teams in these two championship games. So let's get right into it. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and get ready, because in 2 weeks we are watching the Super Bowl for the 2021 season. I hope you are excited, because I most certainly am. So let's talk about it. We'll start with the first game, the Bengals taking on the Chiefs. I'll tell you right now, at the beginning of this game, especially that first half, before the Bengals got that touchdown, I really thought that this game was going to be an absolute wash. I thought the Chiefs were going to run away with it, and that was going to be the end of it. It did not look good at the early portion of this game. The Bengals coming out winners in this one. Offense started out really slow. Defense was letting KC and Patrick Mahomes just dice them up through the middle, on the outside. I mean, you name it, Patrick Mahomes was delivering it. But with the odds stacked against them, though, down 21-10, in the second half, they were able to storm back and get a massive victory. I want to shout out Eli Apple for what was probably a game-saving tackle at the 1-yard line on Tyreek Hill. He was able to prevent them from scoring with about 2 seconds left in the first half. And honestly, if Kansas City scores that, we are looking at a vastly different game, and a game that I just don't know if the Bengals can ultimately end up winning, because at that point, you're down 28-10. You're just shot in the soul, letting a score happen right before halftime. Talk about a game-saving play from Eli Apple. Now, when it comes into that second half, though, for the Bengals, talk about flipping a switch and not allowing, yourself to just kind of fall apart. Trey Hendrickson on the defense, bringing in pressure with that defensive line, sack and a half for himself. On top of that, offense able to capitalize when it mattered most. Defense was able to force a big turnover in the second half. Patrick Mahomes with that weird tipped interception that went into the hands of BJ Hill. Offense was able to capitalize on that, and then all of a sudden, we find ourselves in overtime. Game is on the line. The Chiefs, they just knotted up the game, having the football, so the Bengals defense literally just played defense for a whole 14-play drive. Chiefs are getting ball at halftime. I think everyone on the internet was rolling their eyes with this game going into overtime and the Chiefs winning the coin toss, and I felt like everywhere I looked, people were making comments about the whole playoff thing and the rules for overtime. Bengals defense was able to come up with an absolutely insane and perfectly timed interception. Tipped pass falls into the DB's hand, and ultimately driving down. And Evan McPherson, after just telling his team, I guess we're going to the AFC Championship, I hope he said to somebody, I guess we're going to the Super Bowl, because he knocked in a game winner. And what an absolutely bonkers AFC Championship game that was. I want to shout out the Bengals. I have picked against them 2 out of the 3 playoff games they had this year, but I have been rooting for you guys the entire way through. Since this playoff bracket has started, the Bengals were the team I wanted representing the AFC. I just, in terms, my picks never really matched up with who I actually wanted to win these games, just because I was trying to get a good record in. But realistically, I probably should have just been picking who I wanted to win, because I would have gotten all the Bengals games right. But yes, I shout out to the offense. Shout out to Joe Burrow. Higgins had a big game, 6 catches, 103 yards. Jamar Chase, 6 catches, 54 and a touchdown. Joe Mixon had 21 carries, 88 yards. Samaje Perine, 3 catches, 43 yards and a touchdown from him. Offense was able to get it done when it mattered most in that second half. Outstanding performance, and again, that defense coming up with a couple of Patrick Mahomes interceptions. Exactly what I said they needed to do to be able to come out victors in this game, was to force those turnovers that the Chiefs were dealing with earlier on in the season. They did just that, and are now representing the AFC in the Super Bowl for this season. When we look at the Chiefs, it is tough. You were up 21-3. Talk about a collapse. It's unfortunate. It happens. to the best of everybody. But the first half, I will say, I want to credit the Chiefs, was an absolute clinic on offense. Those first 3 scores on those first 3 drives were unbelievable to watch. It really felt like KC was going to run away with this game. So while, it sucks that they lost for them, and sorry, Chiefs fans, but I will say that, give credit where it was due. That first half of that game, the Chiefs were putting on a clinic. I don't really know what happened in the second half of this game. Obviously, some massive halftime defensive game plan changes made a big deal for this team going into it, made a big deal for the Bengals defense going into it, and it obviously, gave the Chiefs a lot of problems and a lot of headaches. But, what it really boiled down to was just the inability to move the football at all. You look at the numbers and you look at when you go through the drives, no drive went beyond 5 plays in the second half, beyond that field goal drive right at the end of regulation to go into overtime. That's just unacceptable. It felt like, I understand you have Patrick Mahomes, but you got to be willing to run the football. And it felt like they kind of shied away from that. And even though they were getting a few runs mixed in here and there, you could just tell the reliance on the passing game in the AFC is a weird one, in my opinion. It needs to be a more balanced attack. I feel like when you look at the Chiefs, you look at the Bills, their inability to run the football, in my opinion, ultimately costs them games. The Bengals, they had over 100 yards rushing combined. I mean, if you look at Mixon alone, he had, what was the number, 88 yards, I think I said, off his 21 carries. Not a ton of yards per carry, but still nearly 100 yards on the ground for just their leading back on its own. You got to be willing to run the football and run the football and run the football when it's necessary. I understand it's, the sexy thing to pass the ball all over the place, but you got to be able to run it. Patrick Mahomes wrapped up that second half with 2 interceptions and no touchdowns. And on top of that, he managed 17 yards through the air, not including that final drive where he added another 36. So, I mean, you're looking at 53 total yards in the second half, including overtime. I mean, those are not the numbers you're looking for. You got to be able to be more balanced and run the football. And I feel like the Chiefs kind of went away with that. And I understand you just won a massive shootout the week prior. This is a different game, though. Definitely another curious thing to have seen was just how soft I feel like the defense went in the second half. I mean, you got back Tyrann Mathieu in that game, the defense all hyped up and everything, but it just felt like they were allowing Cincy to move at will, whether it was on the ground, through the air. Every time I looked over, I felt like, I just was watching the Bengals rip for 3-4 yards here and there in that second half. And even if they weren't finishing drives with touchdowns, they were still knocking in 3-point field goals. So, I mean, it was just interesting to see how locked down this defense was going through that first half. And then just, I don't know if they gassed out or whatever it may be, maybe just not making the correct adjustments at halftime, whatever it may have been. Interesting stuff to see how just like it was a tale of 2 different stories with the Chiefs. Dominating defense, dominating offense in the first half, and then just inefficient offense and a very open defense in the second half there. I fully expect them to be back. This is the 4th straight AFC Championship game that they've made since Patrick Mahomes took over, but definitely a tough loss to swallow, I'm sure. Now, let's talk the NFC Championship. My goodness, what a game. I was rooting for the Rams in this one here. I also picked the Rams in this one here, so I go 1-1 on the championship games here for this weekend. I will say this, the Rams, they need to get out of their own way. That first half, they left 14 points on the table. One with the Matthew Stafford interception at the beginning of the game, that very first drive where they were literally on like the 2 or 3 yard line. That cannot be happening. You cannot be giving games away like that right off the rip. And they're lucky that they were able to do what they were able to do on defense to keep the 49ers in check, because that's backbreaking against a really good offense in both the Bengals and the Chiefs if you're playing one of those teams. On top of that, couple of dropped passes from both Cooper Kupp and the rookie wide receiver. I believe his name's Skowarnik. I don't know if that's being pronounced correctly. Please let me know if it's wrong. But yeah, just like a ton of dropped passes here and there. And really interesting play calling that I don't want to get into too much because the Rams did win at the end of the day. But it just felt like, on top of the issues in the first half, late in the second half, it just felt like McVay just ditched the run altogether and was throwing the football way too much, taking way too many deep shots and not just running the offense. That first half, aside from the interception on the goal line and aside from those 2 missed deep throws that just did not connect because of drops, that offense was so efficient and running so well. Just run your offense, McVay. You have so much talent. Just run the offense. Did not need to be as antsy as that game was. I will say that, a lot of more issues as well that I have with the Rams team here, and I sound like I'm dumping on them. I'm excited they won, don't get me wrong, but I'm a realist here. Poor tackling was another thing. They allowed Debo to just do whatever the heck he wanted throughout the entirety of that game. It felt like I was just watching Debo Samuel every time he touched the football kind of steamroll them in one way or another. And, Debo Samuel, hats off to that dude, because he is an absolute freak of nature here. I'm trying to pull up some numbers because I do want to shout out Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham, and I guess I forgot to write down their numbers statistically here for this game. But I do want to say, again, shout out to those wide receivers in Cooper Kupp and in Odell Beckham. An absolute monster game for Kupp. 11 catches, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day through the air. Incredible numbers at that. And then just to go into a little more detail here for Odell Beckham, what did he end up having? Because I felt like he was making plays too. 9 catches, 113 yards. There was a point, and also I want to shout out the tight end Blanton too. He had 5 big catches, 57 yards once Higbee went down. Massive game for him too. But I remember everyone was saying Odell Beckham was washed up when he was leaving Cleveland, and I'm going to be honest, I even partially kind of felt like maybe, after having so much time spent not really doing a ton, dealing with injuries, and just not producing the numbers that we all came to have expected of him when he was in New York, maybe he was just kind of, maybe he lost a step, maybe he just didn't have it all like he used to, who knows. But man, has he shut people up. He has ingrained himself in this offense and is a godsend for this team, considering Robert Woods went down with an injury right after they signed him. I mean, I don't know where this Rams team would be without Odell Beckham right now. And talk about a timely signing. The Rams, overall, excellent unit. Offensive line looked really good. They did let up a couple of sacks, one early, one late, but I mean, you're playing against Nick Bosa. You're down to let something up. But I do have to point out the severe lack of pressure in this game that I feel like I was watching. There was no sacks from this team, and honestly, the pressure did not come in until like the last 2 drives for the 49ers when things started to kind of fall apart on that offensive line for San Fran. That can't be happening against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. You're going up against an offensive line that is not one of the greatest in Cincy. That pressure needs to be coming each and every single down, because even when Joe Burrow's getting sacked 9 times, he's winning playoff games. So let's just keep that in mind. But shout out the Rams, big victory for these guys. The 49ers played their absolute hearts out. This is one of the most talented teams in the league, in my opinion, except, and I hate to be jumping on this bandwagon, but there is a lot of truth to it, except at the quarterback position, and I'm really hoping that Trey Lance is able to change that. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive mastermind. Debo Samuel is a freak of nature. Elijah Mitchell is an excellent running back. You guys have the best left tackle in Trent Williams, and him in motion is probably one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Literally took 2 guys to cut block him down there at the end, like towards the end of the game. Incredible stuff from him. So much talent. Brandon Ayuk has really stepped up this year. There is just so much to like about San Francisco, and I understand Garoppolo has been hurt, but even before he was hurt with the shoulder and the thumb thing, I just have not believed in him. I did not like his play. I think that he was very up and down all year, as he has been the last few years. Do I think he's as bad as some people have made him out to be? Probably not, but I think he's good at best, and at worst, he's below average. And his decision-making under pressure, based off the way that game just ended, is probably his worst trait when it comes down to things. He misses really open receivers and makes ridiculous choices like that for the sake of the game, when you basically just take the sack at that point. You just threw the game away with that. You still had a couple more downs to at least try. Whether that was going to end up in your favor or not, who knows? We'll never know now, because you just tossed up a crazy throw hoping it would land in somebody's hand, and it went right into a DB from the Rams. The O-line, though, over there, fantastic. No sacks allowed. Like I said earlier, I feel like they barely let any pressure in up until the late stages of that game. Debo Samuel, 99 yards total, touchdown on the day. That guy is unbelievable, and I think any team should be kicking themselves for not drafting him if they did have the opportunity to. He truly is the heart and soul of this offense, and I feel like his play has elevated players around him like Elijah Mitchell, Brandon Ayuk. Every year, Debo has gotten better and better and better, and I think we are seeing a culmination of just an absolute star over there in San Francisco. I'll be very interested in seeing what the 49ers decide to do going forward. They, like I said, they played a really good game. The quarterback position has got to be the biggest question for them, whether they opt to just move on from Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. However they decide to go about that, trading him, I don't know exactly what they decide to do. If they just, I don't think they would just let him walk. I don't know what his trade value is going to be. You could argue his trade value may have dropped these last few weeks because of his play, but the argument is he was hurt. So there is pros and cons to that discussion, and you can have that discussion all you want. It's probably something we'll look at in the future, but this is a 49ers team that, in my opinion, is a quarterback away from being in the Super Bowl next year. If Trey Lance can step up and be that dude, or maybe if Jimmy G can get healthy and they run it back with him for one more year to let Lance develop, if he's not hurt, maybe something happens. But the track record for Jimmy Garoppolo right now has not been great. He's been hurt a lot. Poor decision making, and I just it's time to move on, in my opinion, for San Francisco. I'm excited for Lance and the future that they have there. Kyle Shanahan, offensive mastermind, excited to see what they do this offseason. But that is my reaction. I'll have a preview for the Super Bowl coming up later this week. We'll have NFL Honors preview as well, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one.